Hello everybody, this is Tip Top MTG here today with another Magic the Gathering video. In today's video, we are going to be looking at all of the card spoilers for Time Spiral Remastered that have come out today being March 2nd. So in this video, I am not going to be talking about the spoilers for the main set. Those are all comprised of cards that were printed in either Planar Chaos, Time Spiral, or Future Sight. So those three, sets were part of a block, and this is a combination of that block into one set for a draftable experience. But part of the original product, there was a kind of slot in the booster pack for a time-shifted card. And what is happening is they have that again, but this time the card is going to be in the original Magic frame, but it's a card that was never in that frame before. So it's a printing of cards in the old Magic frame, and you'll get the hang of it pretty quickly. There is one of these in every booster, and yeah, so why don't we just jump right into this? Starting off, we have Stinkweed Imp. It's a 3-cost creature that is really only there for the Dredge 5. I mean, it's a very powerful effect. The fact that, instead of drawing a card, you could pay, put 5 cards from your library into your graveyard and then return this to your hand. Now, I'm not going to necessarily talk even that specific about the cards, but I'm going to talk about why I think they're a good choice. You'll also be able to see the last time it was reprinted in the bottom left and the price for the exact version you're seeing in the bottom right. So to get this version of the card with this, I guess not new border, but the old border, it is going to be $2.99, and I think a lot of that is held up by that little graveyard in the upper left, which used to signal a card that, cared about something in the graveyard. And you'll notice that any card in this, booster slot that has that, effect, whether it's flashback or dredge or whatever, has that little tombstone, and I think that actually makes it more appealing to a lot of people. Next, we have Grey Merchant of Asphodel. This is also a $3 card, but it was last reprinted just back in Theros, so it was Theros Beyond Death, sorry, not Theros. And so it is definitely not a card that necessarily needed a reprint. It is using the original art, though, and I think it's one of those cards where the art really matches the old frame. There are a couple of these where I think it's a miss, and I think there are some where it works really well, and this is an example of one that I think works really well. In terms of the card itself, it's, decent. Definitely not a card you throw in every deck, but it has some value to it. Next, we have Liliana's Triumph. I think this is one of the ones where it doesn't necessarily fit the card, frame. It is, I think it is close in the way it's shot a little bit, but I think that the art just really doesn't match the old frame. But, I think that, when I first saw it, I was like, oh, this really matches. But the more I look at it, the less I like it in this frame. But I'm sure there are going to be people out there who like it, like this, or who have decks that are primarily in this frame, but they have this card, and so they want to swap it out. Either way, it is one of the promotional versions. Like, there's a promo version of it and this version, so if you don't want the basic one, you do have some options, and I think this one is pretty interesting, just because it is not necessarily the greatest mesh. Next, we have Goblin Engineer. This was last reprinted and it's never been reprinted. It was only ever printed in Modern Horizons. And yeah, it's a pretty good card for goblins. It's coming in at about $6. And I think it makes a lot of sense. I feel like this sees a lot of play in things like Commander and older formats where this card style is more prevalent, and I think cards that are more important to those older formats are more likely to be expensive because, you want your frames to match. I think that's a lot of the appeal, is that you can have a deck that's all this frame, and what's going to help with that? Having old cards. Next, we have Dreadhorde Arcanist. It was spoiled in a different language, so you can see the version of the card on the left. Now, this was last reprinted, actually not reprinted, I don't know why I keep saying that, last printed in War of the Spark. It was also the first time it was printed, and it was a very, very powerful deck in Eternal formats, or at least part of decks in Eternal formats. I can't speak today. This is really throwing me off. Either way, because of that, it was banned, and so I think, if this would have come out before it was banned, this would be a much more expensive card. But you'll notice there's a little arrow next to the price, and if you've been watching the other videos, that means that price is not for the version with the old frame. It is for the version you see on the left. And the reason for that is that Card Kingdom, the person I'm using to get the price, or the company that I'm using to get the price, first off, that's all in USD. They don't do the cards until they can show you what it looks like, and since they don't have the English spoiler for it, they can't really sell it at this point. So that is the price that is not the old frame. So expect that price to probably go up to something like $8 to $10. But then again, I think we really don't know what these prices are going to end up looking like. And yeah, I'll talk about that a little bit more throughout the video. Next, we have Alesha, who smiles at death. This one is a legendary creature. So I think this one actually has a chance of going up, where a lot of these I think are going to go down as, it's printed and they realize, oh, these are, there's one in every pack and each card has equal rarity. I think the legendary creatures have a high chance of going up for the simple fact that if you're blinging out your deck, the first card you're starting with is probably the commander. And so if the card can be a commander, I might be more willing to spend a couple extra dollars in order to get a cool looking version of it over something that I might see 1 in 10 games. So I think that it is very interesting and has the potential to go up because of that. Next, we have Anger of the Gods, 3 cost, red sorcery. It's going to deal damage to each creature, and creatures dealt damage this way die instead. I don't know why I necessarily read this one. It was last reprinted actually in Secret Lair, but before that it was Mystery Booster. I know this card sees a decent amount of play, a little bit not like a lot of play, but it does an effect that is very needed to a lot of formats. And so I think it will, I think the art works really well, and I think that this will actually be one of the more popular versions of the card. Next, we have Felden of the Third Path. Essentially, take what I said about Alesha. This card is legendary. Therefore, I think it'll go up in price because legendary creatures are better, I feel like, selling in both foil and in alternate art and frame. Next, we have Kiki-Jiki. This one is, again, the legendary thing, but Kiki-Jiki is already an incredible card that is already pretty expensive, and this just amplifies it, especially because it is pretty big in Eternal formats. So this is actually going for about $35. I expect that to fall, but I don't know, maybe if there's not enough supply, that price could even go up. But yeah, I think it has some very interesting potential to see, to see how people like it with this kind of card where it is such a big thing in Eternal formats. Next, we have Bedlam Relver. I'm not going to talk specifically about the card, but it is going for about $5, so it's a little bit more than normal. And yeah, it's interesting because it's never been reprinted before, so it's good to see it get a reprint, but I don't necessarily expect it to drive down the price too much. Next, we have Lava Spike. This was last reprinted in Ultimate Masters, and this version's going for about $13, which is one of the biggest jumps from, normal card prices to, versions of this. This must be, really popular in, burn decks or something, especially in something like Legacy or Vintage, where a lot of these frames are a thing. But yeah, it's definitely interesting to see such a big price difference, because I believe it was printed at Uncommon in Ultimate Masters. So yeah, it was, it's a pretty big price jump, and I think a lot of that has to do with it being popular in older formats. Next, we have Atali Primal Storm. This was last reprinted in Jumpstart. This is one where I don't think the art necessarily works well with the frame, and it's also not a card people are looking for, so I don't exactly understand why this was included, but if you enjoy it, of course, go ahead and enjoy it. Of course, also, I've been talking about my opinions this whole time, but those are my opinions. And first off, I want to know your opinions. But also, just because I say I don't like something doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means that it's not my thing. And it's okay for us to like different things. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Next, we have Past in Flames. This is a pretty big card, I believe, in Modern. Again, we see the graveyard symbol, and you'll actually notice the coloring is different, and I don't know if that's just how it was spoiled or if the card's actually going to look that different, but going for about $8, that's a pretty significant card, just because if you look at the price of a pack, that pretty much covers it. And this is a bonus slot. So yeah, I think that this is pretty interesting to see. And it's good to see cards that see play. Some of these cards aren't the most expensive, but almost all of these cards see play. They're not going over here, taking some random 3/3 for 3 and giving it this frame. They're giving it to cards that people actually play so people can use these. And I think that's a great way to do it. Next, we have Vandal Blast. Pretty iconic card, at least in my mind, for things like Commander. It has only seen a reprint once, and that was in Commander 2015. And it's good to see it get a reprint, but of course, I don't expect it to drive down prices too much. Although it is, I believe, the first time it is being printed in an alternate frame or art, way. So it's kind of interesting to see that. And it's going for $12, which is a decent amount. Next, we have Temur Battle Rage. This was last reprinted in Commander Legends, so not that long ago. It's a pretty boring card. I've definitely seen it before. It goes in a lot of Infect decks, but it's pretty generic in its use, and it could probably fit into a lot of decks, so it's a pretty good choice. And it's pretty cheap, so if you're like looking to, I mean, it is, you know, the normal version's like 25 cents, but $2 isn't bad. Next, we have Monastery Swiftspear. This is a pretty big card, at least I know I don't remember if it's Pioneer, Modern, Red, aggro. And yeah, it's a pretty big card in those, and Burn is especially with that prowess and haste. And so it's a card that sees a lot of play, and it is getting a reprint here, and it's going for about $12. So that's a pretty big deal. Next, we have Exquisite Firecraft. Interesting sorcery. Never really seen it before, though. They, for some reason, don't have this in Card Kingdom right now. It has never been reprinted, and so it's going for about $1.30. So expect that to go maybe up to $3 in this frame. Next, we have Zealous Conscripts. It's essentially a creature that also acts of treason something when it enters the battlefield. It's only seen one reprint, and oh my god, no it hasn't. What am I talking about? It has seen a couple of reprints, and it's going for about $4. It's not the most amazing thing, and I'm not a huge fan of the art, but again, if you like it, that's all that matters. Next, we have Molten Rain. This one's going for 99 cents. I believe it's one of the cheapest ones today, and it's a land removal spell. And I think a lot of the reasons this one is low on the list is because land destruction just isn't that widely played. And again, you're probably looking for cards that are going to see a lot of play. Although I could be wrong. Maybe this card sees a lot of play, and it just has been reprinted a ton, so it isn't worth a lot. Either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll be back at it tomorrow talking about, I believe, the green cards. And so, yeah, if you want to see that, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and let me know all your thoughts on this in the comments down below. See you in the next one.